I'd like to extend a warm welcome and thank you for joining our presentation this evening. My name is Cindy Schufelt, and I'm a school support counselor with Safe Schools and Wellbeing, and I will turn it over to my colleague Caitlin to introduce herself now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cindy. And if you don't mind just going back one slide, I think we've jumped ahead a little bit in our presentation, which is okay. As Cindy mentioned, perfect, thank you. As Cindy mentioned, my name is Caitlin Chow. I have the fortune of working with the Safe Schools and Wellbeing team as well with Thames Valley District School Board. My role is as an educator, and so I support numerous schools across the valley to create safe and inclusive learning environments. And then I also co-chair different projects such as this one.
Great. So as Caitlin mentioned, we are very fortunate with our local school boards and community partnerships to hold these workshops. Our presentations are held online throughout the year with varying topics and presenters. If you were to click on the link in this slide, it will take you to our website. You can see previous webinars that we have done that you're able to watch, or you'll see upcoming presentations. And at the end of the presentation, which you've already seen the slide, you'll see our key contacts that you can contact us at the end of the presentation if you wish. So as I said, I'm excited to be able to introduce Kelsey Morris and Gail McVicker from the London Abused Women's Centre. And this evening, they're going to speak to their presentations, Families Are Talking, Relationships for Elementary School Children. And I will turn it over to them now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate you spending the time with us. So, Kelsey, if you just want to introduce yourself, and I'll get our PowerPoint up on the screen.
Absolutely. So my name is Kelsey Morris. I'm an advocate counselor at London Abused Women's Centre. We're just going to start off by letting you know what we do and what London Abused Women's Centre offers. So we are a counseling agency. We offer advocacy and counseling to women and girls who are 12 years of age and older, who are currently or who historically have been subjected to intimate partner violence, sexual exploitation, human trafficking, and non-state torture. We are non-residential, so we are those 9 to 5 hours. We are not a shelter. All of our services are completely free. We offer the one-on-one individual sessions, and then the clients also have an option to partake in any of our group works that we also do. I think that's it. I did our mandate. I did feminist counseling agency. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. So feminist counseling agency means that we use a feminist lens in the work that we do. So on a micro, meso, and macro level, we are kind of looking at the world, we're looking at social issues, we're looking at inequities through the lens of feminism. We do not judge women for the decisions they've made. We never try to convince women to make certain decisions because, like I tell people, at the end of the day, at 5 p.m., I get to go home. And I know that I'm safe, but whatever decision that woman has made while we're having conversation, while we're spending time together that day, she goes home to that decision, right? And so our services end at 5. So we never judge or try to convince a woman to make any kind of decision. We will gather as much information for her as possible so she can make an informed choice. We do advocacy as well. We've got good working relationships with different agencies in this city that allow us to better support our clients and provide those wraparound care for them as well.
That's pretty comprehensive, Kelsey.
Thank you very much.
My name is Gail McVicker, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the London Abused Women's Centre. So my job is working with partners within the community to raise awareness about the issues that Kelsey talked about, all those services that we provide. And one of the things that we do is each November we have Shine the Light on Women Abuse campaign. And the goal of the campaign is to show women and girls who have been abused, trafficked, or exploited that their community supports them in their quest for living a life that's free of violence. And it also gives us an opportunity to highlight some of the agencies within the community that can provide them with help and shifting the blame from survivors onto abusers. On the 15th of November, some of you may have participated in this in previous years. We have our Wear Purple Day to show everyone that you're in support of these women and girls. So I've got a couple examples of some of the participation we had this year for Shine the Light. So we had the police involved, we had schools involved, and in the past, we've also had the Peace Tower on Parliament Hill light up purple for us as a sign of support. So it's going quite well, and we've even had, you know, people in Australia and Sweden participate as well. So to jump into kind of the meat of what we're going to be talking about, family values and rules. So really the main thing that we want people to think about is leading by example. So sometimes we have to think about if our behaviors match our values, because children a lot of the times learn from your example more than just your words. So if you're someone that says, in our family, we treat people with respect, excellent. So how are you showing that? So if someone cuts you off when you're driving, is the air then blue with new words that you've invented to be angry with someone? Or are you dealing with that? Are you showing that you can have a disagreement with someone and still treat them with respect? The other thing is, in that moment where you might be very frustrated with the people driving around you, are you able to manage your anger? It's really important to be able to show your children how to deal with anger in a positive and healthy, non-violent way. And I don't know if people are familiar with this term co-regulation, but what that means is sometimes you might have a child that is having very big emotions and they're not really in control of them. They may be throwing things, yelling, screaming, racing heart, having trouble kind of just getting control of things. That's when they are dysregulated. So if I was to co-regulate with the child, I would be there and dealing with them in a way to remain calm and help them bring their level of emotional engagement down a level. So I can think of a time where there was a young man that I was working with who, when I arrived at the home, was standing on top of the family shed and was throwing bikes and acting out, shall we say. And mother had really lost her temper at this point. She was also embarrassed that he was doing these behaviors. She was yelling, she was screaming. Everybody was really upset. And so I had to go in. I mean, Jacob, that's not his real name, by the way, but Jacob, I need you to come down off the shed. That's not safe. I know you're feeling frustrated. I hear that. And keep trying to be calm in that moment so the child can see that they're being heard, they're being seen, they're being validated. But I am not going to up the stakes by going to that place of dysregulation with them. I'm going to be that calming presence and trying to provide a safe space for the child to understand that you can express your feelings and be heard, and it doesn't need to go to that high level of yelling, screaming, throwing kind of things. The other thing is solving problems. So how do we break down a problem and find a workable solution? Well, a lot of the time that comes down to things like learning the skills of negotiation, compromise, and learning to agree to disagree. Because sometimes kids get really wound up with things and they're like, they never want to play with me. They always leave me out. So being able to break that down and say, okay, so you're saying that Jacob never, ever lets you play with the basketball. No, he never does. He always takes it away from me. But I think last Tuesday, I saw that you guys were playing really well together. So what was happening then that's not happening now? And kind of breaking that down, saying, well, he didn't want to play with me today because I had called him a nasty name at lunchtime. Okay. So maybe that's what it was about. And having them break things down, or even things like ordering pizza. And the discussion is pineapple or no pineapple. Sometimes people are very passionate about their pineapple on their pizza.
I'm passionate about that.
And other people are like, that is so wrong. Fruit should not be on pizza. That is a violation of all things pizza related. So it might be talking about, okay, well, Kelsey loves it. I don't. Does that mean I'm never going to eat pizza with Kelsey? She's a weirdo that just eats pineapple with her pizza. Or can we agree to disagree that, you know what, let's not order pizza. Let's order something that we both like. Or can we do a half and half? Trying to find those negotiations, those compromises, And Kelsey is never going to convince me that pineapple should be on a pizza. And that's okay. We can agree to disagree. That's not really something that we need to stop being friends about. The other thing is modeling being assertive instead of being aggressive. So just for some people, they may not be sure about what's the line between those two things. So if you're going to be assertive, that means you're going to be asking for what you want without putting somebody else down. So I don't want pineapple on my pizza. I could punch Kelsey and go, I'm going to get the pizza the way I want. That's being aggressive. That's not being assertive at all. Me having the conversation with Kelsey and saying, you know what? I'm not going to eat pizza with pineapple on it. I know you really like it, and that's fine. That's cool. You like your pineapple pizza. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's just not what I want. So let's find that middle ground. Because if I just end up eating this pineapple pizza, I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm not going to like it. And I'm not going to want to hang out with Kelsey anymore because I don't feel like she listens to me. She doesn't hear what I want and doesn't respect what I want. So having those conversations about the difference between being aggressive and being assertive. The other part is being able to model that and understanding that everybody makes mistakes. And there's a balance between being empathetic and still holding people to account. So it's one of those things of everybody makes mistakes, and I need to be able to say, I'm sorry. And I need to be able to forgive Kelsey if she does something and she comes to me and says, Gail, I'm really sorry. I should have listened to you about the pineapple. I shouldn't have forced you with this whole issue. So really kind of being in that place to hear each other. The other thing is being kind. Having positive relationships with friends and family and classmates is really important. And sometimes it feels like people are only watching and trying to catch kids doing the wrong thing. I saw that you took that last cookie and you lied about it. I saw that you didn't clean up your room. I saw that you rolled your eyes when I walked away. But what about catching them being kind and saying, oh, you know what? I was so impressed with you today. I was so happy about how I saw you playing with Sally. You were so kind and so gentle. And when she didn't understand the rules, you were calm and you helped her out. I'm so proud of you for that. Really giving them that positive place of catching them being kind. The other thing is being kind to people that are different to you. And I was thinking yesterday, there were so many people celebrating Eid yesterday that were coming to the BMO Center, which is just around the corner from our office. And what an opportunity that was for parents and caregivers to talk to their children about, well, what is Eid? I don't understand. What does that mean? Well, this is how some people celebrate, and this is what it means for them. So being able to have those conversations and being kind and not just, I'm going, well, I don't celebrate that. That's weird that they do. No, in our family, it's not weird. People are different and people are allowed to be different, and that's okay. The other thing is deciding about the boundaries and expectations you have for your family. So each family is going to feel different about when it's appropriate for a child to have a phone or a tablet, how much time they can spend on it when they get older, if they're going to be allowed to date, how old that person, do you need to meet them first? All of those things are really important for you to have that conversation with yourself. If you have a partner that's co-parenting with you, to have those conversations so that it's very easily communicated to your children about this is what we expect in our family, and this is how we're going to move forward.
Okay, my turn. So being an approachable parent or caregiver. These are just some kind of tips and tricks on how to move forward. And I'm going to preface this by saying, parents, there's a lot of self-reflection that's going to be happening here. So one of the first things that we talk about when we are trying to be or embody, being approachable is understanding your own thoughts, feelings, values about what your children are going through. And being honest about that with your kids too, right? Like what your childhood memories were, what your experience was in dating, what your first crush was like. And also normalizing those feelings, right? Like I've noticed in my own children, as they were kind of reaching that age where they're noticing, maybe I have a crush. There's so much embarrassment around that, right? And I think there's rejection in that too, but really normalize it. When you have crushes, that's fantastic. That's great. Like these are things that can be celebrated. We need to be aware of how we feel about something before we can actually effectively talk to our child about it though. And that's going to lead me, I'm going to jump a point here to being an imperfect human. So being an imperfect human means it's okay to tell your child that you don't know. So that could be, you don't know the answer to a question. And that could also be, I don't know how I feel about that right now. Because this is, in a lot of cases, as we're parenting with our first child, right, or our oldest child, it's our first time parenting a 13-year-old. It's our first time parenting a 15-year-old. So you're actually not going to have all the answers. So I'm giving you permission tonight to not have all of the answers, and be honest with your child about that, right? So, I can think my son came to me recently with a question and he was asking permission to do something. And I told him, I don't know how I feel about that. I think I need to talk to, I need to talk to grandpa about that. I need to talk to grandma about that to kind of, gain some insight, talk it out, and then I'm going to get back to you. So understand understanding yourself and then being able to be an imperfect person or an imperfect parent. Also assessing and reflecting on your actual feelings. So this is still about, our own feelings and values. Oftentimes, when our children are coming to us with something and we want to be approachable, we can't be angry. We cannot, we can't, blow a fuse. We can't have a very large reaction, because what that's teaching our child is I cannot go to mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whoever. I can't go to that person and talk to them because they're actually just going to be angry at me. They're going to explode. They're not going to listen to me, right? And so this is the piece where I say there's going to be a lot of self-reflection here, because one thing that I would kind of encourage you to try is really identifying what that feeling is. So, in social work, we often refer to anger as a anger is a secondary emotion, and we've got a primary emotion first. So what is the primary emotion? Are you angry or are you scared? Like, as your child come to you with something that you feel like, you've lost control, or maybe you feel like you're losing control. Are you angry or are you anxious? Are you angry or are you feeling rejected from your child? Those are important things to be able to identify, because then you can actually work through that emotion. And I would encourage you to communicate that with your child too, right? If they come to you with a problem, or if they come to you with a situation or something they saw at school, I'm feeling like really, I feel really uncomfortable with that. How do you feel about that? Right? So identifying and assessing what your feelings are, because it's also, encouraging our child to, instead of being reactive, right, to really search inside themselves and be like, what is that emotion though? Right? Like, let's name that emotion. Also talking with your child. So do not talk at your child. It's a conversation. It's not a dictatorship. So we want to make sure that there is mutual respect happening within the conversation. Listen more than you speak. Your child is coming to you because they're sharing something. And to be honest, your child's coming to you and they're being vulnerable with you. So we need to be receptive to that vulnerability. What next? What next? Remember that youth want mutually respectful conversations. So like I said, avoid dictating, share your feelings, share your values. What Gail was talking about earlier, what are the family values? So I think that's a really good foundation to be able to draw back on. What was one of the values you spoke about? Respect, right? So if your child's coming to you with something and, it's a problem they're having with a peer or a relationship or a teacher or whatever, right? Well, okay, what's important to our family though? Like, what's something that we always talk about? I think respect's really important. So draw back on those family values. Also remember that your child is their own human being. I don't remember what study this is from, but there was a study in Australia done, and it was talking about the influence that parents and caregivers actually have on their children, because we think that we're the be all end all, right? We're very egotistical. We think we have all the answers, that we have all the influence over our kids. And that's just not true. What this study found was it was about 30%. We have 30% influence over our children. The rest is coming from their peers, from their teachers, from other family members, from social media, from the internet, right? So your child is their own person, and you cannot dictate how they're going to act, how they're going to think, how they're going to feel. I'd encourage you to be curious. So just like, you're reflecting on your emotions, etc. Be curious about what they are, what they're coming to you for. Be curious about what they're saying. So instead of, why would you think like that? Why would you do that? Watch your tone and kind of, what makes you think that? Or, well, what about this? Maybe I'm thinking about Taylor Swift because I love her. But my son came downstairs one day, and he's in grade 9, and he said, "Oh my God, why does Taylor Swift always have to be at the football game? She's ruining hockey." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, she's not ruining hockey, she's ruining football. Sorry." But I said, "Okay, what about the cameramen and women that are constantly putting the camera on her?" She didn't ask, so be curious, offer alternatives, don't just put down what they're saying. Another important one is understand what your child is asking or what they're saying. So your child may come to you and they may be saying, "Where did I come from?" And you automatically are going to think, "Where do babies come from?" That's what they're asking. Maybe they mean what their heritage is, right? What their ancestry is. So ask questions, ask for clarification. I have another example about that. My son came home. We were eating dinner one night, and he was in grade 3 or 4 at the time, and he said, just like just like he was asking for chocolate milk, he said, "Mom, I know what 69 means." And I said, so I didn't react. I gave no reaction. I was curious, and I said, "Oh, what do you think that means?" And he told me what it means. And it turned out one of his friends at school had said that. So I was like, "Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Jacob. We're going to blame Jacob for everything." I was like, "Thank you so much for telling my son that, Jacob." But it was curiosity, right? I'm not reacting. I'm not making a big deal of it. But I had to ask, "Well, what do you think that means?" Because like I just talked about our influence, right? He's being influenced by his peers and that's where they're getting their information too. Also, don't underestimate your youth's ability to weigh the pros and cons about a decision. You've done incredible work at giving your child information, at bringing them up with family values, about teaching them kind of strong moral codes and right from wrong. So your child's going to make a decision based on the information that they have, and sometimes it's not going to be the decision that we made. But also remember, you're the parent. You have X amount of years of experience, of consequences, of learning than your child does. Let your child learn. It's a beautiful thing for your child to make mistakes. Just make sure, right, that you're an approachable parent caregiver. And when they make those mistakes, they can be like, "I'm totally going to bring this up to my mom," or like, "I need to call my dad right now." Yeah. Okay. Healthy relationships. So what can we kind of provide for our children in order to help them understand what healthy relationships are? So like Gail's touched on, understanding or defining what the concept of being a good friend is. So, and that is subjective, right? We all have different definitions of what it means to be a good friend to others, what we need in friendships for ourselves. So kind of ask them, tie it back to the family values too. Like, what does it mean to be a good friend? Is it respect? Is it loyalty? Is it important that your friends are honest to you? And then as your youth is growing up, right, and they're hitting those ages where they're going to start seeking out those romantic relationships, you've already built that foundation about what a healthy friendship looks like. And our partners are supposed to be our best friends, right? So you've already built that foundation. You've got a really great starting point when they enter those romantic relationships. And the next is discussing how good friends make you feel, which also means sometimes we're going to do the opposite. We're going to discuss how maybe if they're not such a good friend, they wouldn't make us feel that bad, right? So So, starting with when I'm with my friends, I feel like I laugh a lot. I feel really happy. Or, you know, uh, especially with our kids that are kind of engaged with a whole bunch of children at the same time, that friend made fun of me. Or, okay, well, is that a friend? Like, it doesn't feel good when somebody calls you names. It doesn't feel good when somebody makes fun of the food you're eating, right? My son used to get made fun of for eating banana bread because it was rotten bananas. And I said, well, that's a really silly thing to make fun of somebody for. Like, everybody loves banana bread. So just kind of understanding how does a good friend make you feel? And if they're coming with these, really difficult emotions, that doesn't really sound like a friend, right? Next is talking about how to solve a problem when a friendship goes wrong or they make a mistake as a friend themselves. So, like Gail's already pointed on too, we are the we're doing a really great job in our day-to-day lives, hopefully, to establish kind of what that can look like for our children. So the way that we ourselves interact with neighbors, the way that we interact with family members and our own friends, that's going to kind of teach our children what it looks like and how we can work through, conflict within our relationships. So make sure that you're modeling that. I do want to say too, sometimes as adults, our expectations of children are really out of whack. And I'm going to explain that. So sometimes we expect children to do, say, act in a way that we wouldn't expect an adult to do, say, or act. And an example of that is screaming or having that reactive response to a child, right? So, and I grew up, bless my dad, he's my best friend now, but he was a very reactive parent and he did raise his voice a lot and he yelled a lot. And so, I grew up and I had kids and I thought, man, I'm a full grown woman and I would cry if someone yelled at me, right? Like that's not normal. So teach, like really genuinely treat your children how you want to be treated, because that's also going to model that for them. That's going to show that for them. So when it comes to problems, like an example could be, I'm trying to think of an example. We had neighbors that were incredibly noisy all the time, and they would wake us up in the middle of the night. And so the first 3 or 4 times I was calm, cool, and collected. I was going down there at 2:00 in the morning when my kids were even waking me up saying, Mom, I can't sleep. And I was like, okay, it's cool. I'm going to go and I'm going to be polite. After the 4th or 5th time, I wasn't so nice. So I will say that, but we tried to be polite and respectful about it, but to model that, also being curious again, ask your children how they would deal with the problem. So, if someone has disagreed with them, if someone has hurt their feelings, like, what do you want to do? Kind of how do you want to proceed? How do you want to move forward? Also showing your child, depending on what they say, if you're feeling that it's a healthy response, I support you in that. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good way to handle that situation. Oh, yes. Sorry, I forgot to flip my page. Talk about respecting boundaries and consent with your child outside of the context of sex or any kind of sexual activity. I feel so strongly about this because I think that we have done ourselves a real disservice in limiting conversations about consent to sexual activity. Consent exists everywhere. Like me putting my hand on Gail's shoulder, that requires her consent, right? And her body language is going to tell me if it's a yay or a nay. So you can teach your children and talk to your children about consent everywhere. So it's really, consent is about understanding that people have autonomy over their own bodies and they get to decide what they like and what they don't like. And that we have to respect that, right? Boundaries are not about other people. Boundaries they're about us and keeping ourselves safe. And so if you are doing something or saying something to somebody, they don't like that and they say no, you've got to respect that, because if somebody's treating you that way and you say no, you're going to expect that other people are going to respect your boundaries and your consent, right?
Can I jump in for a second?
Absolutely.
So I was just thinking, when I talk to children about that, one of the examples that I usually get is about tickling. So a lot of the time, maybe you're with a sibling and you're kind of playing around and somebody starts getting tickled and it starts like really fun and it's good and it's enjoyable. And then it keeps going. And one person's like, oh no, you have to stop. I'm going to pee my pants. Stop, 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 stop. So it started out as something that was agreeable to them and pleasurable. At some point, stop being fun. And if the person goes, okay, I'm stopping. I don't want you to pee your pants. You obviously don't want to pee your pants. I'll stop. That's good. They listen. That's respectful. They listen to them saying no. If that person keeps going, that's not being respectful. That's not consensual. Even though they were okay with it in the beginning, they had the right to change their mind and go, tickling? I'm not okay with that because the consequence for me is I might pee my pants and that's not an experience I want to have or have anyone else see. I said, no, I just want you to stop. And kids kind of usually get that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, right, that translates into, as we're older and we talk about consent can be withdrawn at any time, right? So teaching them those kind of messages early. Next is talking to, your child about the fact that they do not have to share their body with somebody if they don't want to. So this is teaching your own child, right? They have their own bodily autonomy. If they are not comfortable giving somebody a kiss or a hug, they don't have to do that. I know when I was growing up, it was expected that you hug your grandparents goodbye. You give them a kiss goodbye. Even if I didn't want to, even if I was kicking and screaming, the expectation was I would hug and kiss my grandparents goodbye. So I will say, sometimes, especially as parents, if we are kind of changing the narrative and we're trying to do something differently, it can feel uncomfortable for us too, right? So if we're going to use the example of hugging or giving a hug to grandma before we leave, the child doesn't want a hug. Okay, that's cool. Can you give grandma a high five? Can you give grandma a fist bump? And
blow a kiss.
Right, blow a kiss. Give them some options. If it's still no, that's all right. No big deal. Love you. We'll see you later. Just kind of end it. If it's safe to do so, right? If you feel comfortable doing so, explain to the other whoever it is, aunt, uncle, sister, friend, hey, this is what we're trying to do, right? I'm just trying to teach little Johnny that they've got full autonomy and, they get to decide if somebody's going to touch them or if they're going to touch somebody else. They're going to give those hugs, those kisses, those pound-its. We want to make sure that they have control, because what this is also doing is teaching the child, if somebody touches me in a way I don't want, that's not okay. Right? If I say no to somebody and they continue to do it, then, I should tell somebody about this because that's abuse, right? And letting your child know if somebody outside of, this is all age depending, right? But, I'm the one that gets to give you a bath, right? So it's okay for mommy to give you a bath. Even just offering in situations where they can start developing kind of their own autonomy of, do you want to do the cloth and do you want to wash that part? And, mommy will get your back. Mommy will do your hair, whatever that is. I'm saying mommy because I'm mommy, but just to give them an opportunity to start learning, this is mine and I get to decide if I'm going to allow mom to have access to my body like that, or if I'm just going to start doing that myself. And always telling your child, if somebody is touching you in a private place and they are not supposed to be, right? If they're not caregiver, if they're not parent, if they're not doctors and nurses, depending for health reasons, hygiene reasons, they may need to. I know my family doctor during checkups asked my children, are you comfortable with that? If the answer has always been no, then okay, that's just noted and it's respected, right? If somebody outside of that is trying to touch you in an area that's private to you, it's really important that you talk to me. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to me about it, find another trusted adult that you can go to with your concerns. I do also just want to quickly touch on healthy relationships about the way that we respond to our children when they come to us, when they have maybe done something that you didn't want them doing. And the example that we have is maybe drinking underage at a party. So your child calls you for help. Maybe it's midnight. They say, Mom, I'm at so-and-so's house and there was alcohol here, but I don't feel well. I want to come home. Okay. We all know that that's underage drinking. We know the risks associated with it. We know, the health risks associated as well as the social risks associated with it. But what your child has asked for in that moment is a safe space, right? So even though you are, and this is where I would ask you to do that self-reflection of, am I angry? And you might be angry. You very well might be angry, but I'd be willing to bet that a lot of that's fear for your child, what could have happened to them, right? So making sure that regardless of what the circumstances are, you're still going to be there for them. You're going to show up for them. Okay. Next, explaining that friendships can change and shift over time. And this is something that we see as adults too, right? Sometimes friendships expire, and that's okay. There doesn't always have to be a conflict or adversity or trauma or some kind of mean name-calling conversation to happen for a friendship to end. So it's okay that your best friend, Johnny, in public school isn't your best friend in high school, because there's a lot of change that happens from grade 7 to grade 10, right? So it's okay if you're different and your interests are different than what Johnny's was, and maybe you're finding different social circles. It's okay if you've got multiple social circles, right, that have different interests. Maybe you're hanging out with the Dungeons and Dragons kids and you're playing video games, and then after school, you're meeting up with the basketball kids, right? It's absolutely okay, and it's fantastic to be able to move around in different social circles like that. Wanting to hang out with new people is totally okay. You're allowed to expand and change who your friendships are, what your interests are. I always say to my kids, like, if I'm not changing, if I'm not growing, like, that means that I've passed on. That means I'm not here anymore, because that's what we're constantly doing, right? We're evolving, we're learning, we are having new experiences that change us as human beings. So it's okay to want to hang out with new people. What's not okay is being mean to old friends. What's not okay is putting other people down if they're not moving with you in that same direction. And that goes back to, right, it's totally okay that I like pineapple on pizza. I'm not going to try to convince Gail to do it. I'm not going to tell her that she's a bad person because she doesn't want to try pineapple on pizza, right? So even though you're changing, still respect that other people are changing too, but in different ways. Having a disagreement with someone, but still being respectful. This is where I always say conflict has a really negative connotation. I think that a lot of times conflict could have just been a conversation, and it turns into conflict when we stop respecting people. So, it's okay to have different opinions about things, or to have disagreements with people, but we still need to make sure that we're treating that person with respect and dignity. The other piece too is, I want to be sure that I'm being treated with respect and dignity if I'm in a disagreement with someone. So, if your child's coming to you and saying, well, me and Katie, we got into a fight at school about this, and I was trying to be respectful, and I told her that it was fine. I tried to walk away, but she was following me and she wouldn't leave me alone about it. Okay, that's not okay, right? That kind of behavior is not respectful. And then that also ties into, what is a healthy friend? What kind of behaviors make you feel like that's not a friendship, that wasn't healthy, that didn't feel good for me. Also, last but not least, real friends do not pressure you to do things that you don't want to do. So with social media, with drugs, with alcohol, with anything that has risk associated with it, or even if it's just something that you're not interested in, you don't want to partake in that, a real friend just gonna be like, no, you don't want it, that's cool. That's all right, no judgment. Also make sure you're extending that to other people, right? If you are, asking if they want to participate in something and they say no judgment. Absolutely, you do what's best for you. It's not, I think that it's getting really tricky too with things like social media. And there are different, I will say there are different, obviously, rules in families about what Gail was talking about earlier. Are what age are you allowed to have Snapchat? What age are you allowed to have TikTok? If those things are even allowed in your home, right? So do you have a friend that's trying to, get you to download TikTok and just don't tell your mom, right? Does that feel okay? I will say too, and I tell this to the women that I speak to every day, trust your gut and tell your children to trust themselves too, right? Like our nervous systems are giving us information constantly, working overtime, trying to keep us safe. And if we feel like something is off, it's probably off, right? So remove yourself from the situation. If you can, if it's safe to do so, right? Call a parent. I have told my son, I'll be the scapegoat. Like you can blame me. You can say that I've called you and you need to come home, but like really tell your kids, I trust you. You can trust yourself too.
So we're going to talk a little bit about being a good friend and really teaching your child what does that mean? Because we've talked a lot about other people and interacting with other people, but how are you being? Are you being a good friend? Other than just kind of decide whether that person is being a good friend to me. So teaching them to talk about their feelings. So we can't go into a friendship with the idea of, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. That is not helpful. If there is any kind of conflict that we're talking about, and Kelsey said a lot of it comes down to conversation. It's trying to talk through a problem that they've had, whether it's about you made some new friends and I feel left out now. Okay, well, we need to talk about that, because just because I'm now friends with Jessica doesn't mean I can't be friends with you anymore, but I didn't really realize you were feeling left out. So let's talk about it, because that also builds trust, to know that you do have a safe space with this friend and you can talk about your feelings, and that doesn't mean it's going to be the end of that. It's really important to be honest, not only for communication and trust to build, but also to represent yourself well and to be that assertive person, to know it's important for me to say I'm feeling left out now that you're friends with somebody else. It's really important to do that, because people can't make change if they don't know what's going on with you. And if you're not able to be honest, there isn't going to be a change that happens. And sometimes part of that conversation is, okay, you're feeling left out because I've made new friends, but you also have to give me some space, because it's okay for us to have different friends. We don't have to do every single thing together. We don't have to do every school project together. We don't have to be on the same soccer team. I don't have to play with you every time at recess. Like, I still like you, but I like other people too. And being able to have those conversations and understanding that space can be a good thing. I can't miss you if you're never gone. If we're together all day, what are we going to talk about? I need to have, like, you go and watch a different movie than me, and then we'll talk about that. You play a different game or go on different holidays, do something different. Then we can go, oh, I've never seen that. Oh, I've listened to this song. You've never heard this before. There has to be that space to let it kind of develop. And like we said, things are going to change. And sometimes you're not going to be able to get somebody else to agree to the way you see the world. That's okay. I think a lot of the times, especially in our grown-up world, there's an us and a them. And you have to think the same thing about me on everything that's important to me, or we can't be friends. And then you're my enemy. And that is just crazy thinking. That's not helpful at all. So we have to go, well, we agree about some things and we disagree about some things, but that's okay. My family taught me that being different is okay, and we're still going to be kind to people, even if they don't think the same things about us. And my family taught me that it's about respect. And so that's kind of really important to me. So that's fine. We don't have to agree about every single thing. And then supporting each other, I think, is really important. And we talked already about forgiveness, but also asking for forgiveness and that honest piece of, I'm really sorry. I probably did make you feel left out when I got excited about the new person that started in our school, because they lived in Italy, and I'm excited about Italy. I want to know all about that. I've never known anybody that like lived in a different country, and I just got really excited and I just started spending time with them. But I didn't mean to leave you out, so I'm really sorry. What can we do to make this better? Like, do you want me to introduce you to the new kid that's from Italy, and then we can all kind of play together, or what do you need to have happen? Like, let's have those kinds of conversations that are about that honesty. And then if somebody offers you an apology, be supportive and say, do you know how much that means to me? That you acknowledge that you didn't mean to leave me out, but you still acknowledge that I felt left out. thank you. That feels so much better, that you actually listen to me. And then when they do something amazing and kind, like they remembered your birthday when you thought everybody forgot about it, say, that's amazing. You made this for me on my birthday. I love it. Give them that positive feedback so they know, oh, I need to do more of that to be a good friend. For this friend, birthdays are important. For that friend, they're not so excited about birthdays. Their family doesn't really celebrate birthdays, so we don't really do that much about it. And then talking really openly and honestly about your boundaries. So we kind of talked about bodily autonomy, but it's also things like when you're in school and your friend wants to cheat off of your paper, or you're out at Walmart or something and they're like, just grab some of those candies, just like stick that in your pocket. No one's going to even notice because I'll like cause a distraction or whatever it is. Or if it's about that new kid from Italy, I don't like them at all. Like, let's just freeze them out and not talk to them. If that's not how you want to be in the world because you come from a place of, but nobody should feel isolated. Everybody needs friends. And one of our values is about being kind, to be able to talk to that friend and say, well, I'm not going to freeze that person out just because you don't like them. They're nice to me. They're kind to me. And if you don't want to be friends with them, that's up to you. But I'm still going to be friends with them, even if you don't want me to be. And, I don't want to steal stuff from the store because my parents would be so upset and so hurt. And also, I don't want to get in trouble with the police. It'd be scary if the police had to come and talk to me. I don't want to do that. So it's okay to be able to talk about your boundaries with those friends so they know that if they're trying to push you into isolating somebody or bullying them, that's not what it's going to be for you. You're not going to take part in that. The other part I think we've kind of started touching on is about talking to your child about bullying and peer pressure. Like, what does that actually look like? What does that encompass? And the thing is, as much as you want to try and protect your children about peer pressure and things, it can't happen all the time. You can't shield your child from those experiences of feeling left out, being ignored, being disrespected, any of those kind of things. But you do need to talk about why it's not okay, because maybe they haven't thought about that person that has been left out. And have they ever felt left out? It's really important that your kids understand that social isolation and bullying is hurtful. And if they are having that experience, they see somebody being bullied, you can tell them to go and tell a grown-up. And if it feels safe, tell the person bullying that what they're doing is not okay and they need to stop, or help the person being bullied to leave the space. Create a distraction. If someone is purposely being left out, you be the person that offers to sit and talk with them and include them. And really, peer pressure is about disrespecting boundaries and consent, because people who respect other people's boundaries don't pressure or force them into doing things they don't want to do, like stealing candy from a store or cheating or isolating someone. If someone says no, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, the other person doesn't listen to them and they're not respecting that no, and then they're not respecting your boundaries. And if your preteen is feeling pressure into doing something by a partner or friend, that's a sign of them being not a great friend or potentially a partner down the road. The other big piece is about owning their feelings and encouraging your preteen to talk about their feelings early and often instead of holding on to things. Because pushing your feelings down for a long time can lead to like lower self-esteem and a big fight that could have been avoided. Like Kelsey was talking about, really conflict doesn't necessarily need to happen if you just have that conversation. But if I was feeling left out because a new person had come on the scene and my friends were really paying attention to them, and I just let that sit and shove that down, and it just starts boiling over every time I feel left out, I might make a bad choice and try and sabotage that relationship. I might go after the new person and try and start bullying them, thinking, well, if I can make them look bad, maybe that person will come back to being my friend. And things can just really blow up. So it's really important that they learn how to express those feelings and sort that out. The other thing is to apologize genuinely. I think we've all probably worked with the child and said, you need to apologize. And they go, sorry. Yeah, that's not really a genuine apology. That's not actually making amends. It goes a long way to help move on to disagreement if there's a genuine apology. So helping them learn I statements like, I'm sorry that I made you feel left out. That's not what I wanted to do. What would you like me to do better? And have them have space to actually listen. Well, you don't have to be with me all the time, but if you could like introduce me to the new person, or if like we could still do our like Friday night watching movies and like playing games, that would be good. And then like you can do other stuff. I just feel like you haven't even been doing the Friday night. So if we can keep Friday nights, that would be good. Okay. Next time I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to make sure that I check in with you about things, and I'm going to talk to you about how we can maintain our friendship. That kind of, so they're using those skills we talked about before about negotiating, finding a win-win, agreeing to disagree, all of those things, and keep building those skills so they can make sure that they are being a good friend. And sometimes people get a bit confused about, okay, so let's look at like, when is an unhealthy behavior actually become abusive? So we're going to start with the concept that healthy behaviors and relationships are based on respect, equality, and consent. And each person feels that they're comfortable and respected, and they are in a place where they feel like they can tell the other person how they really feel, like I'm feeling left out. That each person is listening and respecting the other's point of view, and that they make decisions together. That it's, if there is a bump, the words are had and they're listening. Each person has equal say in the relationship, and they show respect even when they disagree, and they work together so that each person gets what they need. The friends and the partners are honest about how they feel, which we've kind of talked a bit about. And they want for their friends to have fun and to feel safe being themselves too. So I had a friend that we had planned to go to a spa, and we went and did this whole spa day, and I thought we had an amazing time. And it wasn't until afterwards that she said, yeah, I kind of hate going to spas because I don't like being in bathing suits in public, and I was kind of miserable the whole time. Like, okay, but if you had told me that, we could have planned another activity that we would both enjoy. So you need to be able to have those conversations, because I want you to enjoy hanging out as much as I enjoy hanging out with you. And if I'm doing something that's putting you off and making you upset, we need to talk about that. That's what healthy relationships are about. Both people having equal enjoyment of it, and trusting the other person. And there's a balance between time alone and time with each other. Like we talked about, I can't miss you if you're never gone. And each person values the differences between each other, and they work to be non-judgmental, and they try not to say harsh things to each other. Like I said before, everybody mucks up sometimes and says something that they shouldn't. That's when that genuine apology comes in to be helpful. So if we're looking at unhealthy behaviors, this is kind of on a spectrum. So we're looking at if there's discomfort in telling the other person how they feel. Well, what if I told Gail I didn't want to go to that spa because I didn't like being in bathing suits in public? Maybe she would never want to do anything with me again, and she'd think I was no fun. So if that's what's happening, that needs to be something that's addressed. It's not healthy. You should be able to feel how you feel and to talk about it. And if there's a discomfort, that needs to be addressed. Ignoring the other person, not respecting their opinions, talking rudely about them. So maybe you've got kids that are working on a project at school, or they're trying to build something together at home. They've got all their Legos, they're out, and they're trying to build something together. And one of them is saying, don't listen to them. That's a stupid idea. I've got a way better idea. And constantly brushing them off, talking rudely about them. That's not okay. That's not part of a healthy friendship. We can't be doing that. If they're manipulative and aren't accountable for the actions. So it might mean that the person goes along with things they aren't comfortable with because they were pressured into it. So they were pressured into going for a smoke. The person like, I don't want to do that. I don't it makes like people's breath smell and it's like gross and can lead to cancer. And my grandma had cancer and I don't, it's just, but if they feel pressured into doing it, that's problematic. If they are embarrassed or feel unsafe to say how they feel and what they need, and if the person feels like their needs are being overlooked. So I don't eat those things because I'm vegetarian, I'm vegan, I'm lactose intolerant, I've got a peanut allergy. Well, if they're embarrassed to say those things, that could actually be a health concern for some people. So they need to be able to say what they need and expect that that's going to be respected. They think that there is something wrong if the other person wants to do anything without them. When it comes to that thing of, no, you're my best friend. We have to play together every day at recess. We have to like all the same food. We have to like all the same music. You can't play with a new kid that's just moved here from Italy. That's not okay. It's all me. That's beginnings of jealousy and power and control. That's not part of a healthy relationship. That's unhealthy. If there were harsh words that were used, and the other person felt like they were harmed, that's beginning of a unhealthy relationship. If that pattern continues, that might move into abuse.
So next is blatantly abusive behaviors. So if you are afraid to tell the other person how you feel, so it's not just uncomfortable, it's anxious and scared. If you're afraid that when you go to them, you're going to be rejected for what you've said, you're going to be abandoned, they're going to put you down, threaten you or harm you, that's abuse. If another individual uses threats, ignoring your feelings, making fun of you. Like Gail said, right, in a healthy relationship, both people, like it's mutually beneficial. Both people are being respected. Both of their ideas and their beliefs are being brought to the table, and each person's being heard. If somebody is using violence or threats to make somebody do something they don't want to do, if the other person has pushed you into doing things that make you feel uncomfortable, scared, or ashamed, that's abusive. If the other person's ignoring your needs or your wants, if they're not respecting your boundaries, in an instance like this, right, non-consensual touching might be happening, sexual assault, things like that. If the person is keeping you from your family or your friends, if they're sabotaging those relationships, that's isolation, right? So that's a tactic on the power control wheel. They're seeing those other relationships, even if they're just platonic friendships, they're seeing that as a threat to whatever relationship you have with that person. They could be monitoring your phone, going through your messages, telling you to block certain people, without your, even, we say without your permission, but if an individual is in an abusive relationship, whether it be platonic or romantic, right, we may quote give permission, like, can I go through your phone? Yeah, okay. It's really not consent, but we're scared. If we're afraid to say no, it's not consent. And then last is just a pattern of verbal, emotional, or physical abuse. So it could be damaging your belongings. It could be threatening to hurt other people. That includes like pets and other family members. It could be actual physical harm. One of the things that we do want to focus on when we are kind of making this distinction between abusive behaviors and, unhealthy behaviors is the pattern. So, I've had a client say, well, there was this one time, that he came home from work and he didn't want to talk to me and he just kind of sat in his room, blah, blah, blah. Okay, how often did that happen? Once in our 3-year relationship. That's not a pattern, right? So it's okay for people to have off days. It's okay for people to have a completely empty cup and maybe they can't give in their relationship like they typically would. It's when these things become a pattern. Like, at the beginning, everything was great, but then slowly but surely, maybe the first time, he called me stupid. And then 2 weeks later, he called me the B word. And then, a month later, he was going through my phone, right? So it escalates and it becomes a pattern. That's what you want to look for too.
I'm just looking at the time and I want to make sure that people have a chance to ask any questions. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and then we'll open it up to see if anybody has any questions.
We're very chatty. We have a lot to say. We could talk all night, but.
I can certainly appreciate that passion. So there's nothing in the Q&A at this point, but what I will do for any participants is I'm just going to allow the ability for you to turn on your microphones. So if you do have any questions, you're welcome to use the put up my hand feature or just turn on your microphone. As Cindy mentioned, we do ask that you not share your name or any identifiers. And if there aren't any questions, we might pass it back. So I'll give everybody just kind of a moment. I'm not seeing anything popping up. So you are welcome to continue with that. And we do understand and respect that if some people aren't able to stay at this point, we are so grateful for having you here. There will be a follow-up email coming from me later on. But I do encourage everybody to stay to finish out this last little bit of content, which I know is great as well.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Oh, I see one hand up. Please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're still muted. If you want to unmute, then we can hear you.
Sometimes, like you were saying, Kelsey, finding the different buttons on different platforms, and if you're used to Zoom and you're on Teams all of a sudden, so sometimes that can just be a little bit tricky. So you're welcome to unmute yourself there or put the question in the Q&A. And if for some reason that technology is not working, please know you can always email us as well. How about you keep going and we'll see what happens. And if that person, if you manage to find that button, you are more than welcome to interrupt us as well.
Is there anybody else that had anything on their mind? Any questions?
We also offer constructive criticism. Like, please don't be afraid to like call us out on something that you may not agree with, or, you know, you want to have a conversation about, not conflict. We can do that too.
I don't see it at this point. So Gail, why don't you share your presentation again? And I know there was a handful of slides left. And so maybe we'll just wrap up that content, and anybody's welcome to chime in should they have anything.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I appreciate you being mindful of the time though.
Okay. Just I can get it back up now. Technology is great. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time.
You've got patience. You're doing great.
Resume. Beautiful.
Let's go back to resume where we were.
Excellent.
Okay, so we got through all of our signs of abuse.
All abuse. So now we're doing warning signs of intimate partner violence or exploitation. So first, we're just going to define sexual exploitation. So that way everybody knows exactly what we're talking about when we discuss the warning signs. So sexual exploitation happens when an individual or a group of people take advantage of an imbalance of power to coerce, manipulate, or deceive a child or young person between the ages of 16 and 17 years old for sexual purposes in exchange for something that the victim may need or want, financial advantage or increased status for the perpetrator or facilitator. So we are saying 16 to 17 years old, kind of for the purposes of this demographic or the audience here, but sexual exploitation can happen at any time in anybody's lives, as long as these kind of scenarios with the material benefit or financial benefit, exploitation, power imbalance, if those are all factors, then it's exploitation. The victim may have been sexually exploited, even if the sexual activity appears to be consensual. Child exploitation, sexual exploitation, does not always involve physical contact. It can occur through the use of technology. And unfortunately, we are really, really seeing that with the increase of social media use and different platforms. There was a case, I know it was in Canada. I want to say it wasn't too far from us. I want to say Windsor, but I could be wrong. It was about 2 years ago. There was a young boy, a teenage boy that had been, that was sexually exploited from the time that he sent the first intimate photo of himself to the time of his suicide was hours. So this isn't, the thing is too, this isn't something that necessarily needs days or weeks or months to transpire. The consequences of this are immediate. So sexual exploitation can include engaging in a sexual relationship with a young person as someone in a position of power, trust, or authority. So this could be teachers, parents, step-parents, babysitters. A babysitter is in a position of authority. Or the young person's dependent on them for care or support, personal support workers, EAs, things like that. Inviting a young person to touch the body of any other person for sexual purposes. Making sexual comments to the child or the youth, exposing your intimate body parts to them, asking them for their intimate body parts, voyeurism, having a sexual fixation on a child or their clothing or body parts, luring, sexually related phone calls, and engaging in sexually related correspondence through the internet. I almost said MSN. That has not been a thing since like 2004, 3, I don't know. So not MSN. I'm not hip with the kids. Snapchat, Discord, things like that. So some warning signs of intimate partner violence or exploitation. One of the first things we see is withdrawing. So they're not necessarily hanging out with their friends anymore. They're not going to hang out. They're not going to the movies. They're not going to the mall anymore. They're staying home, or maybe they're spending more time with their partner. They're being secretive about that new friend or their partner, making excuses for that person's behavior. Well, he just does that because he really loves me. Or, okay, let's go back to like what our definition of love is. Let's go back to what the family values are. Losing interest in typical favorite activities. So let's say, a young person's on a volleyball team or a basketball team, all of a sudden for what seems like no reason, right? They're not going to practice anymore. They drop out of any extracurricular activities. Decline in school performance. So that might be increased absences, showing up late, seeing their grades drop. Those are all signs as well. Having unexplained injuries like bruises, burns, scratches. Sometimes they're going to try to hide them, right? So clothing is another one. So if an individual is wearing like long sleeve and it's August and it's 40 degrees, that's a red flag as well. What are they trying to hide under there? Frequent absences from home activities or school, having unexplained gifts or cash, any kind of material items like that. So if if a child's showing up with $100 cash and a Gucci purse, that's a red flag, right? If a 13-year-old's coming with that, where did they get that from? Giving scripted or canned answers to casual questions. So if it feels fake, it's probably fake. Showing fear and intimidation through facial expressions or body language. So if the person's not making eye contact with you, if their body language, like if Gail's talking to me and I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I get it. So I'm totally avoiding her. Another thing is intoxication or substance use. So oftentimes traffickers will use substance dependency as a way to unfortunately keep women in the game or in the life. We also want a disclaimer here. Somebody could show every single sign on this list and they still may not be trafficked or exploited or in an abusive relationship. These are warning signs, right? And it's also not an exhaustive list, but these are warning signs. It does not mean that if you're seeing 70, 80, 90% of this, that it's happening for sure. It's just something that you want to keep your eye on and you want to start having conversations about it. Okay, so we've told you about that. How do we keep children safe? So helping children identify dangerous situations. And that can start with something like as simple as when Gail was saying, I don't want to steal from the grocery store. Like, I live by Cherry Hill, so there are weirdly a lot of children in Metro sometimes. So like maybe I don't want to grab, a pop. I don't want to do that. That's a dangerous situation. Being clear about who is allowed to see and touch your body. That's going to help keep your children safe because again, bodily autonomy, boundaries, consent. Teaching them to come to you or another trusted adult if they feel like something is wrong, whether that be with themselves or somebody else, right? So even if, hey, Sarah at school, she had like a bunch of bruises and it looked like somebody grabbed her arm. I'm really happy that you told me about that. Like, thank you. And you're the adult, you get to kind of, take the next steps, contact the school, whatever needs to be done. Like I said, let yourself be the scapegoat for your child. So blame me. Tell them that you're going to get in trouble if you're not home by this time. Tell them that I texted you and I've asked you to be home immediately. There is like, I've told my son, he's in grade 9, and I've said, if you are ever in an unsafe situation, or if you ever feel uncomfortable and your body's just telling you like, I need to get out of here, it can be 3 o'clock in the morning and you can call me and I'm going to come and get you. And this is what we all have to work on, that self-reflection. I'm not going to react. I'm not going to be really angry at you, right? You're calling me because you want to be safe. That means that I have to be the safe space. Keep computers, tablets, and phones in shared spaces only. So there are certain like software programs that you can put on phones, tablets, TVs, etc. We know that they exist. We don't have, Gail and I have not done exhaustive research to be able to kind of recommend one for you. If that is something that somebody's interested, we can do some follow-up and make sure that we share that information with Caitlin and Cindy to be able to add to the resource portion of the website. But that does exist. So the other thing is too, if they see, like, tell your kids, if you see something on the internet and it just kind of, it gives you the ick. That's a term the kids are using now, just so you know. If it's giving you the ick, then come to me and we can talk it through, right? You know, if it's making you uncomfortable, maybe it's going to make me uncomfortable. I can validate that for you, or we can talk about why it made you uncomfortable. And as a parent, you're going to be able to see the source that discomfort's coming from, right? So if it's a website that maybe needs to be flagged, unfortunately, YouTube, albeit they say they try, but the parental controls are really not that fantastic. So sometimes you're going to have to block content creators, but making sure, again, approachable parent, that your children feel like they can come to you when there's discomfort happening. If your preteen is in a relationship with someone older than them, this can be a sign of an unhealthy relationship. So that can be a red flag. Making sure that you're staying engaged with them about what's happening, you know, ask questions, be curious. Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be our last slide. So this is what happens if my child has had an experience that is quite upsetting, if they have been exploited or have experienced intimate partner violence. So the first bit is sit down with your child somewhere quiet and private and give them your full attention. Listen and trust whatever they tell you. They might be telling things that to your mind seem unbelievable, that this is an aunt, uncle, cousin, trusted neighbor that is engaged in inappropriate behavior with your child. But you need to listen and trust whatever they're going to say and ask non-invasive, open-ended questions, and really encourage them to accept support from professionals or offer to go together. At LOC, at London Abused Women's Centre, we offer services for girls from ages 12 and up. And we also support families if their child or daughter, if a woman in their life has been exploited, we will also support the families as well. So that's an option for you. The other thing is Canada has a tip line to report online sexual exploitation of children, and that is CyberTip. There's also the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline, and it's confidential, multilingual, and it operates 24/7. And the number is there for you to access. Additionally, obviously calling the police, letting them know so that action can be taken. And like I said, we're always here as well. So if you have this experience, if someone you know has had this experience, there is help out there. There are people waiting to support family and the woman or child or young girl that's had that experience.
Also, if you've got questions, if you're not sure, but something doesn't feel right and you want to kind of consult with a professional, we have an urgent support program. It's offered Monday to Friday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. There's always a counselor available that can speak to you for 15 to 20 minutes. You can call in, you can walk in. Again, it's completely free. You can bring a child, right? If they've got concerns, right, 12 and up, or if you're just a parent that has concerns and you're looking to see it, you know, if we're the right service for you, if we're the right fit. And if you're not, if you don't fit our mandate, then the urgent services counselor is going to be able to direct you to appropriate resources for you. So I always tell everybody, just call. Even if it's not us, it's not going to be us that support you, you're going to be connected to somebody that is going to be able to support you.
So this, I think we kind of covered a lot of it through our conversation, but these are our contact details for the London Abused Women's Centre, our website, our phone number. And if you want to drop us an email and have a question, you can just send that to info@loch.on.ca.
There we go. Thank you so
Thank you
so much.
much.
Yeah, there was a lot of information in there. And I do appreciate the personal connection, right? To understand and contextualize things and share those stories. So I do thank you both for that element of time. And I recognize there's still a hand up. I imagine that there's still some difficulty, though it does say maybe the mic is on. So if that person is able to communicate, you are still welcome to ask that question.
Can you hear me?
I absolutely
Yes.
can.
Oh my gosh. I'm not the talented technician that you think I am. You can't see me. I don't know. I should have been on a half hour before to give you the thing. I did send an email to about 5 people because every time I went to send an email, it didn't go anywhere. My question is that I came in at number 9 of 17.
In terms of the slides?
Yes, slideshow.
Okay.
And so I didn't get the first part, but I have a question because I'm a noon hour lunch person.
Mhm.
And I take care of JK and SK, and I can see all of these things. And we are taught how to stop confrontation. We're taught that before we go to school. Okay, go to work. Now, we see all of these things in bullying happening in JK and SK. That's junior kindergarten and senior kindergarten. And we have 4 different classes, and French and English, doesn't matter. You can pick out the same people in each class that matches the person in the next class. So my question is, with all of the training that we have, how do you get it down to the JK and SK where you can make a big difference in how it happens? But these kids are very, I know they have issues at home. I'm thinking carefully about how you do it. And sometimes if you're aggressive in saying you can't do that, I mean, that's aggressive for them. How do we look at these kids and try and help them be a better person? I intentionally, kids come to me and say, he's not going to be my friend, or he doesn't want to be my friend today. And I said, well, you've got 50 other kids out here. Why don't you try another friend? Then I have the kid that comes, he punched me in the head, but technically they were playing tag and he had to touch him, right? And so I said, well, the game you're playing may be difficult to not engage, but you don't have to come to me to tell me that this is a problem. You should let him know that this is what happened and apologize. So is that creating a good, because I want them to speak on their own. I want them to let the person know that they didn't like that. And that's what I'm trying to create, but I don't know if that's the right thing to create at this stage of JK and SK.
I'm just thinking for JK and SK, it might be skills that are too big for them to manage on their own.
Yeah.
So it might be taking the little person that got hit in the head when they were playing tag or whatever game it was, say, okay, so who was the one that hit you? Was it Jacob? Okay, I'm going to go with you and we're going to talk to Jacob. Okay. And sitting down with them on their level physically on the space. So you're not at a higher plane than they are, and having conversation saying, Jacob, Michael just came and told me that he feels upset. So Michael, can you tell Jacob why you feel upset right now? I feel upset because you hit me in the head when we were playing tag and I hurt my head and I don't like that. We're supposed to be friends. Whatever he has to say. Okay, Jacob, did you mean to hurt Michael? No, I was just playing the game. Okay. And I can see that you're very excited. Your cheeks are all red, Jacob, and you're running around and you're very excited. I understand you get excited by that game, but sometimes we need to think about how we hurt other people. And even if you didn't mean to hurt him, you still hurt him. So, Jacob, what would you like him to say to you? Or Michael, what would you like him to say to you? Well, he needs to say sorry because you're not supposed to hit people. My mom told me you're not supposed to. Okay. Okay. So how can we do an apology? And if Michael's response or Jacob's response is sorry, okay. So let's work on what we talked about, how we do apologies, so that at the end of that conversation, that Michael that was hit has had a chance to say, I don't like that. I was hurt. He's been able to express that to them. Jacob that did the hitting was able to understand that even when he's excited, he still needs to be accountable for his behavior, which is it's never okay to use your hands to hurt somebody else. And in our school, we don't put our hands on other people. We use our hands for helping and not hurting. So you need to say sorry. And if that means for the rest of the day, you guys need to play separately. And then tomorrow we're going to try and play together again. That's okay. Do you feel like you guys can play together now? Maybe. Okay. So you're the moderator because for SK and JK, they wouldn't necessarily be able to navigate that because there's still a lot of emotions, especially if the one that's been doing the hitting is still in the middle of the game. And they're like, no, I'm supposed to be playing the game and you're trying to take me out of it to talk to me. I don't want to talk. I want to play the game. To be that moderator, to talk with calming voice and giving them space to like calm down and breathe and think about it. And can you see how sad he is? Can you see tears in his eyes? Do you remember when somebody made you have tears in your eyes? How did that make you feel? So teaching that empathy is another piece to kind of work with them in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can see it happening, except like you say, that one that you get together, when you get them both together, they're both ready to fly and go play the game. So that is my interpretation, that they could tell them. I would like them to see the explanation and talk about it, but you're right, there has to be a mediator to teach that conversation.
And
so
sometimes if
good.
children are very upset, they
Yeah.
might be crying really hard.
Yeah.
And can't get
And
the breath in, or they're anxious because I want to go back and play the game. And so their breathing is all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can keep that co-regulation saying, okay, and I want to hear what you're saying because it's important that I'm able to listen to you. But when you're crying that hard, I can't hear you and I want to hear you. So let's take big, deep breaths. And you want to go back and play the game? I know that. But right now, this is what we need to do. And when we're done this, you can go back to the game. But right now, I need you to put your listening ears on. We're all going to take a big breath. Okay. And we stop crying. Okay. I'm ready to hear if you're ready to talk. Okay, buddy. What's happening? That kind of calm breathing and being that co-regulated person so that you don't up the game and start going, you need to sit down. I told you to sit down. You can't play the game until I send you back out there. You need to sit down. And you're crying and I can't hear anything you're saying. Yeah. That's going to be an acceleration in everybody's. So it's on you to be the mentor, to model the behavior, the breathing, the co-regulation, the negotiation. You're the calm the storm. Yeah. Which is not always easy to do, granted.
Right. I also want to congratulate you on the abusive part, because parents, we never realized in my generation, not going to date myself, but old, the fact that abusive relationships happen is unconscionable to parents. How these things can actually grow to be infested. And I just think that the words you're using are so critical and so clear that it shouldn't be difficult for a person to understand that they are being abused without well, not acting on it, but making the decision not to be there. That's the answer. They see the abuse. No, they don't see the abuse. They hear the words, the little things that grow into abuse. They hear it, but they don't accept it, and that's when they keep going on. So you're right to include the first things and the things that go in a cycle and how it grows. Yeah, we know it, but sometimes we're in the same spot, right?
Mhm.
And this way, if these kids are learning this in school, that's not all right. Why do I have to go to the show that you like and I don't have a choice? And the progression into taking over everything that your mind, let's say, it's a welcome thought that if this is being taught in school, the basics that we know is wrong, but we sometimes get included in it. I think that parents will be proud of the fact that at least they're learning this, even if they're pulled aside to a social worker and say, this is abuse. Do you realize this is abuse? It sounds like a very clear message for the kids that are in the middle of it, but we have to get them out of the middle of it.
Well, I think we recognize for adults that are in um, relationships where there is abusive behavior within it, there's a lot of complexity of getting out and supports, and that would be a whole other conversation. But I think the thing that we really need to continue to think about is if adults struggle with getting out of a relationship that's not healthy for them, that's actually to the point of abusive, and we hopefully have much more skill and experience to be able to navigate those things, children need our support to be able to understand what is a good friend.
Yeah.
Am I being a good friend? Who can I talk to if I'm not having an experience where my friends make me feel confident and happy and fun and enjoyable? If that's not happening, who can I talk to about that? And should I talk to about that? Or is that what I kind of deserve? We need to have those conversations at an age appropriate level to set that foundation so that hopefully as they age, if they come in contact with friends or potential partners in the future, that those red flags come up sooner rather than later to say, wait a second, these are the family values. I'm supposed to treat people with respect, equality, and consent. That is the basis of healthy relationships. Doesn't feel like that. So something's off.
Mm-hmm.
And sooner they get that as the foundation and know that those three things are the foundation, the triangle of support for healthy relationships, then hopefully they can flag it and seek support. If they need that support multiple times, so be it. But they just need to know. So thank you for giving the feedback that you're in support of us having these conversations with elementary school kids at an age appropriate level.
Yep. And so with that piece too, in terms of feedback, I'm going to have Cindy put up our last slide because we do really value that participant feedback in terms of validating both what was really helpful and maybe things that maybe you'd like to expand upon. What is it we can do better? And also it helps us in terms of growing this project and, justifying it to some degree in terms of the people behind it, the time that goes into it. So hearing your comment is really valuable to us. So Cindy's just going to share this last slide here. And I will be sending out an email in the upcoming days as well, should you not be able to get it in this moment, so don't panic. But it just invites you to be able to either scan the QR code, I'll send you the link in an email, and there's just a really brief survey. And so that would be really helpful as well. As much as I value hearing it in this situation, having that captured within the survey helps us when we go back to look at our data for this project as well. So I'll let Cindy close us out, and I will say a great big thank you to everyone.
Okay, so thank you so much to our presenters. We really appreciate you being with us tonight, Gail and Kelsey. Like we said, if you have any more questions or require any more information, you will see our contact information there. We really do encourage you to give us some feedback, as well as encourage you to sign up for our mailing list through our website as well. And this again will help us look at other presentations in the future. We also want to wish everyone well and hope that you will join us again. We do have presentations coming up at the end of April and again during Mental Health Week, which will be the week of May 7th. And we thank you so much, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening. Do take care.